Hello, ladies and gentlemen. So I decided, you know what? Let's go back to traditional content where I can make money, where I can entertain viewers. Um, go back to what this channel was formed with, which was election predictions. Throughout the summer of 2024 and approaching the fall, I did a lot of election predictions. I don't do those too much anymore, besides for 2026 predictions, because if I'm going to make a prediction, it's going to be on 2026. But I decided while I still delay the New Jersey gubernatorial video, haven't forgot about that one. Might as well do a presidential prediction. Now, I will say, this is not the most likely matchup I see. I think there's someone else who has positioned themselves much better to be supported by the establishment, um, black voters, and be the presidential nominee. Someone less influential, but still much more influential. The most influential, besides for this person, should she decide not to run. And I think that he will probably be the presidential nominee, but I am making a much bigger video, a bigger project. To put it in perspective, people do election nights. A lot of channels are built on those election nights. I want to do one of these for that person. Um, Now, those election nights, from what I've seen, are usually 200 to 300 slides. To make like a 30-minute election night, maybe. Sometimes it can be a little bit longer. Um, but depending on how fast you go through it, something like that. Because they're made in Google Slides with the format. The one I'm making is going to be about 1,500. Yes, that's right. This will be like an hour-long video, and I have to handcraft each of these slides. It's a massive, massive project that I can't get out in a timely fashion, and yet I still pretend is happening. Um, I'm like 200 slides in at this point. It's very hard. So because of that, I'm not going to do a prediction with him. Instead, I'll do the second most likely. You probably know Kamala Harris. Do you recognize that name? It was right here. Now, Kamala Harris is leading in most of these hypothetical polls because 48.43% of the nation voted for her in 2024. Um, but in a lot of these people's hearts, she has a very special attachment. I don't think people can ever completely underscore how desperate and depressed the Democratic base was when Biden was the nominee. I think that they would have been lifted out of it at the convention, but you know, after Trump's assassination, like Democrats just almost gave up. Um, and like, there's an argument that they should. Back when Kamala Harris was considered the presumptive nominee in that little limbo period, in July 21 to 22nd, I was saying that if I were her, I wouldn't even accept the nomination because you were that screwed in this election. Um, but a lot of momentum was manufactured for her, and plus, like, she was she was going to be, thrown into the trash heap of history had she not taken the nomination. But for one campaign, she was able to, appear glorious and dazzling next to Trump. Constant praise from every section of the Democratic Party. She was considered their savior, and then she lost. But because of that, a lot of appeal still has stuck around for her. Now, there's really two parts of the Democratic base that are opposed to her. The moderates and, establishment is like, she lost. She lost. It's like with the conservatives in Canada. I know, of course, tying it to Canada, but like for the conservatives in Canada, you could have all these positions on the issues, but the major thing, the thing that the party was founded on, this is usually what parties that are in the national governing coalition of a country are founded on, which I would say that Republicans are the natural governing coalition of America. So the Democrats, as the opposition, are founded on this winning elections. And the one knock against a candidate that will render them completely obsolete in any leadership election is that they've lost before. Um, and Kamala Harris has lost before. So a lot of establishmentarian Democrats, moderates, are very upset at her for that. And then the progressives, blame her for supposedly being a centrist, even though, she was an open socialist when she ran in 2020. Um, they blame her for that. So she would lose support from them. And then I guess like she wouldn't win Kentucky in the primary if Bashir runs. Wow, whoop de doo. I think Kentucky is like 20 delegates. Massive numbers. But other than that, most of the Democratic base would be willing to vote for her in a primary. So there is a serious case as to why she would win a primary. I don't think she will. Once again, this mysterious guy who I've been referencing, you can probably guess, is the favorite as of now to win the primaries, position himself well um, to be a nominee. I think he would win over her, but I do think that there's a chance Kamala Harris, if she seeks the presidential nomination, I'm of the opinion that she retires from politics. There's not too much higher you can climb than being a presidential nominee. And seeing as, spoiler alert, um, when everything went right for her, she lost. In a full general election where not everything goes right for her, she'll lose. She'll lose by more. So, besides for being a presidential nominee, the highest you can really go is being president. Um, and if that's blocked off, I really don't see why she would run for anything. Governor of California is great and all, but just pales in comparison to the vice presidency. Um, but you know, we'll do the prediction anyways because these trends are interesting, and I want to show what the new and improved testers had so much um, thought put into this. I've made videos on individual states, but I want to tie that together into one big prediction. And I'm going to go back to the routine before, where every day it's a new person who's put up against Shady Vance for a prediction. This will be maybe one of two 2028 predictions because it's far enough away that besides for based on fundamentals, um, there's not much else to contribute to an election prediction. You know, it's hard to do these, and I don't think that Republicans should be focusing on 2028. Every issue that happens in American politics, people, they have this instinct to be like, "What? How does this affect 2028?" Like, to me, you might as well say, "How does this affect 2030?" Because you know those senators were elected in 2024. Um, I don't see why 2028 presidential election, why looking forward to that for everything is any different than 2030. But we won't know how the midterm election will go without knowing the president. We won't know how the presidential election will go until the midterms in 2026. We won't know how the midterms go until the gubernatorial elections in 2025, or the policies that Trump is implementing as president. But still, we can have a general idea of how this will go. Take it with a grain of salt. Um, Margin of error of 15 points. Anyways, I think that JD Vance picks Marco Rubio as his VP. A bit more of an establishmentarian favorite, good with Hispanics. You want to go for a full sweep of border counties, and he could do it. El Paso probably flips. Here, Doña Ana could flip. Um, Santa Cruz and Pima on a good night, he could flip. And by good night, I mean Jesus Christ comes down from the heavens and says, Pima County, in Santa Cruz County specifically, please vote for JD Vance. I beg you. And he wins Pima County by about 0.7%. And then San Diego County, anyways, yeah, but you want to go for a full sweep of those Rio Grande Valley counties, massive Hispanic appeal here. You just need it. Marco Rubio also probably milk toast. I think most of the Republican base likes him, and he's a fighter. I disagree with certain people when they insult my man Marco Rubio. I think he's one of Trump's best cabinet picks. The fact that now every Democrat in the Senate is like, "Why did I vote for this guy?" just underscores how much he's doing to threaten these people. And then Kamala Harris will pick a white man. Which white man? I don't know. There's like 150 million of them. Flip a coin several dozen times. I think you should be able to cover most of them with that. She could be picking me. Would I refuse? Much rather be vice president than election predictor. Um, Even though it wouldn't go well because when we fill out the safe states, we have some new inductions. Um, ooh, scary. That new induction. Obviously, Vance is not going to underperform Trump in any of these states. Maybe Ohio. Um, could be under 10 on a bad night for anyone not named JD Vance, but this is his home state. Yeah, but we have a new induction. Everyone, welcome. Maine second. We love you. Yeah. So Maine second was like a 9.6% win for Trump. Um, I think JD Vance can do like it a little bit better in Aroostook County and then make it a 10-point margin. Yay! Anyways, safe Democrat. California, even though I don't think California would be another 20-point win. You guys are seeing this, okay? Yeah, I don't think California would be another 20-point win. I think you'd still see Democrats bleeding in Los Angeles and the Central Valley, and even in the San Francisco metropolitan area, I still do think she'll win it by 10. Washington, Oregon, I also don't like these trends, even though it is a bit closer than these two. Oh, by the way, I think California votes to the right of Washington in a quirky way. But like Portland is not shifting right. In fact, Portland proper shifting left. But some of the suburban areas around it are shifting right. Yeah, not a great result for Republicans. Hawaii, um, I think we'll leave Colorado off for now. Um, then along the eastern seaboard, Maryland, DC, obviously. Um, Delaware not shifting Republican. Connecticut and Rhode Island, maybe. I think Connecticut probably stays with her, seeing as it's not shifting that Republican. Um, Outside of Bridgeport and the other areas of it in the New York metropolitan area. By the way, remember, back in the olden days when Fairfield County was the entirety of the New York metropolitan area, and it was great. It was so clearly defined. Now we have the Council of Government system, which means that part of Western Connecticut, part or all of Bridgeport, part of Nalgat, part of South Central Connecticut are all in the New York metropolitan area. I love Connecticut. This is why I hate the fucking city. Massachusetts, Vermont, Maine's first. 219 to 116. I think we can see who has a slight edge in this election as of now. But that's only the safe states. You had a problem for a while back when Texas, Iowa, Ohio, and Florida were all likely Republican. Maybe Iowa and Ohio would move off the board, but like where you fill out all the safe states, Democrats are inevitably going to have a lead, um, because most of their safe states or most of their big states on their side are safe. California, New York are going to be over 10 points. Even New Jersey, Washington, Massachusetts, Maryland kind of counted for that. Illinois. Um, while states like Florida and Texas would be like 9-point wins for Republicans. Still safe, but doesn't contribute to the safe states exactly. My point is it could be the opposite here. Illinois, New York, that's going to get Democrats a solid, what is that, 47 electoral votes. We got to wait and see. Maybe after the likely states, Democrats will be in a position to fight. Um, Said likely states, Arizona I think is a likely Republican. Arizona, part of this was suburbanite shifts, part of it was Hispanic shifts. I think Hispanic shifts continue this idea. Hispanics are going to shift to the left because of mass deportations. They want Why do you think they shifted towards Trump running on mass deportations? They were like, oh, by mass deportations, I thought you meant shipping a million Mexicans. Like these people do not want more Mexicans. Like this idea, oh, but they're Mexicans. Obviously, they want more of them. Not every Mexican wants to ship in their abuela from uh, Baja California, and their 200,000 buddies. Like, no, these people are going to continue shifting Republican. Now, will it be another 6-point shift? No, that's why it's not safe, and instead is likely. I don't think you'll see the same suburban revolt as in 2024. Like Maricopa, yes, part of it was Hispanic shifts, especially in Phoenix. You can see that at precinct level data, but the suburbs still shifted Republican. I think you see a little bit of a rebound here. Maricopa still stays Republican. I think it's going to take a lot to flip that back for Democrats, but you do see it shift a little bit left. Pima County also not the best for Republicans, though I do think you see the rural areas solidify a little bit more. Santa Cruz County could flip. Yuma County, I mean, it's Yuma County, it zooms off a cliff. And you see places like Apache, Coconino, the Democratic margin go down a little bit there, as many of the Indian Reserve members shift towards Trump and Republicans. Nevada also, I think, is inducted into this category, seeing as you've had massive shifts in places like Clark, Washoe. I don't love to use them because I don't think that they correlate to elections well, but if you want to do voter registration trends, you've seen especially Clark County shift heavily off a cliff towards the right, and Republicans flipped the voter registration, then it flipped back, then it flipped back. Currently, it's a Democratic lead. That is because most of the Republican rural areas perform maintenance. It should flip back again, 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 soon enough. So you could use that as a trend. Um, I just think you're going to continue to see Hispanic shifts, working class shifts in the Las Vegas metropolitan area, which is Clark County. You can potentially see Vance flip the county. If he does, he'll win the state by a likely margin. I think he does, likely margin. But, I'm going to say no on that for now. And the states are white again. Um, I think when that happens, it just deletes the flip color. Okay, it's lagging a little bit. I did not think that would crash my computer. Um, bear with me, but I'll explain. I'll explain the likely Democrat states like this. I'll fill them in afterwards. Oh, there we go. See, I had solutions, which was explain these states first. Um, yeah, it's really breaking now. Um, let's go here. I think it fixed itself. It fixed itself, so likely Democrat. Colorado, I think you will see the Denver metropolitan area shift right again, which is why I think it's narrowly under 10 points. Plus Pueblo and Hispanic trends also, but I do think you'll see some more suburban shifts towards Harris. Jefferson County, I think she'll improve by a little bit. She'll probably flip her first county out of Grand, which shifted left, but did not shift left enough for her to flip. She'll probably flip that, continue to do better in the western portion of the state, which is shifting left. But I think the Denver metropolitan area narrowly knocks it down below a 10-point win. Illinois as well, I would consider is in that category. Um, you're seeing, especially Hispanic trends are affecting Cook County, making it shift quite Republican. You have to talk to Luke about this because I'm not doing precinct level analysis into Cook County. Um, my bad. My attention is much better served on getting bitches. But Cook County is shifting pretty Republican, and the state is shifting with it. Illinois shifted quite Republican in 2024. You're also seeing the suburban areas because of that Cook County shift and the fact that Chicago is an infamous shithole. You're seeing some suburban areas shift towards Republicans. Those might not continue. The Cook County shift will, narrowly under 10 points. Um, Virginia as well. I don't believe in Virginia trends. Um, I think that you'll see the northern areas continue to shift Republican. Um, this Central Virginia, it's the very tip of the black belt. You can see this in some of these counties being blue, and a lot of them being black. But that is shifting Republicans somewhat. But you are seeing Richmond suburban areas shift left, and I do think you'll see Hampton Roads shift to left. It really didn't shift that right in 2024, and I just don't think it's a big GOP area. I don't think it's because the mass firing of federal workers. Oh my God! With their commute from Virginia Beach to DC, that's like half a joke. People thought I was, serious about them commuting from there to there. In the last that was a joke. You know, settle down. Oh, but the federal workers shut the fuck up. But these areas shifted a little bit Republican here, so I wouldn't bet on, a complete reversal. I just do think, you know, Virginia Beach is probably not the best area for Republicans. Very suburban. We even saw this in 2023. These suburban areas are not coming back. Um, they're not going back. I'd say it's about the same um, as the 2024 margin. New York, I think New York is in for quite a Republican shift. Again, in 2024, I don't think it flips. With anyone short of AOC. But I do think I don't want to jinx it because this is exactly what happened in Texas, but I think you're going to see New York City continue to shift right. One, they elected Zoran Quaron. That leadership is going to be great. We'll just like ignore all the major problems with immigration and crime, and instead we'll make the government own the grocery stores. That's a great idea. But you'll see the shifts continue there as the city burns. There's the smell of flesh moves to Nassau, Suffolk, and the surrounding areas up north. I think they'll also shift Republican. Plus, these areas are very interconnected into the city, hence why they smell the burning flesh from everyone in New York City. Um, Upstate New York, I think Vance could have some more appeal to them. I do think he has more of a college educated, traditional conservative appeal than Trump. Trump's a very divisive figure. I think with someone like Vance and Marco Rubio, you could potentially get some of these people back. I just don't think it'll be enough to make New York competitive, but it'll be a state for the future. Another state for the future is Rhode Island. Um, Rhode Island has shifted right twice. It was fool's gold the first time. 2016 shifted heavily right. We were like, oh my god, we're going to win Rhode Island in the future. Then it shifted left in 2020, and we were like, oh my god, we're fucked in Rhode Island. Then it did it again in 2024. Um, I think you're seeing Providence, especially, shift quite Republican. I think the state has been very poorly governed by people like Dan McKee. I think that trend will, to some extent, continue. Um, it'll be like a 9.5 win, kind of like Colorado, but I think it'll be likely Democrat at the end of the day, and I think that it'll be closer than Kamala Harris's 14-point win in 2024. General theme. And then Maine, also Maine, you're just seeing the coastal areas shift left. I think honestly Maine might shift left um, from 2024. It's just these coastal areas are very elitist, not good for the GOP, not going to be good long term. So be warned about those areas. Nebraska second, also a very college educated federal worker type area. You know, the feds, the feds. Um, but it was narrowly under five this time around. I don't think Vance gets the same type of luck. I think you're due for a little bit of a blue shift in Douglas County. Plus, you know, it's not exactly um, made to be the most Republican district. Like, if Don Bacon's only winning this by two, it's a ticking time bomb. There's a reason he's retiring. I think it's likely. So that did somewhat close the gap. 236 to 193. It's gonna get worse though. Don't worry. Leaning Republican. The first one, North Carolina. This was kind of not contested until Kamala Harris became the nominee. Then it was contested, honestly, more than Georgia for a little bit. But North Carolina has always been fool's gold. Democrats have hyped themselves up every cycle to flip it. It remains Republican. I don't think that Republicans can really win the state by more than five. Besides for like some of these down ballot elections, like treasurer, labor commissioner, agricultural commissioner, they won it by more than five. That's down ballot elections. I think that you're gonna see, you know, this kind of circle, minus the part here around rally, continue to shift Republican, mostly black belt areas, especially the North. Even to some extent here, like Robeson, Black Belt County used to be an Obama county, 64 to 36. Also, funnily enough, an Obama Robinson County. I love politics. But I think you'll continue to see that area shift Republican. Vance probably picks off a few more black belt counties in the North, or Northeast, but those don't have the most votes. The problem is these suburban areas are not shifting left, and yes, you could say it's a red wave. Okay, let's give them a 2 point Dem shift, 3 point Dem shift, even be generous. That's not enough to flip the state. That's not enough to particularly get close in the state. Plus, you'll see over here Republicans will rebound because this was mostly the hurricane. Um, and these suburban areas just are not giving way for Democrats. Like some of them are shifting, but not nearly enough. To hand Democrats the state. I think the state Democrats can win it in off years, midterms, and down ballot races, but for the presidency, I think it's still going to be a little bit out of reach. Then Michigan, while North Carolina is a little bit out of reach and a potential win, Michigan is gone. I have made this declaration before. I will once again say it again. Michigan is gone for Democrats. They will win it in 2026 in one of the two major races statewide. Then it is gone. They will not win another statewide election in Michigan again. Besides for some weird ones, if Republicans run Mark Robinson in Michigan, so Tudor Dixon, then Democrats might win it. But otherwise, I think these trends are deadly for Democrats. I think that Detroit continuing to shift Republican, which probably happens. You could, one, say Muslims. We don't think the Muslims. Muslims are only shifting more Republican. Um, you know, you have a lot of division among progressives, and that's going to lead to some more Muslims flipping to Republicans. Plus, the war in Gaza is probably working out to Trump's benefit. It's dividing the Democrats quite a bit. While Kamala Harris was better than Biden on it, to be honest, she didn't do that bad with Muslims. I think she'll do worse. Plus, they're a very socially conservative group. They should vote Republican. As the stench of Bush fades, they'll continue to vote more Republican. Plus, these rural areas are nowhere near to maxed. Republicans can do much better here. And these suburban areas aren't that big. Oakland, Kent, maybe Kalamazoo and Isabella. You want to push it. Ingham can be considered suburban. Otherwise, the state really isn't that suburban. Um, there's some suburban working class areas, but it's always that mix, and that mix is going to be to Republicans' benefits. I think the trends continue. I think Maine is gone for Democrat. Not Maine. Michigan is gone for Democrats long term. I'm also gonna be bold. Gonna be bold. Um, Actually, I'll go with the less bold one. I think Pennsylvania also by a lesser margin. I think Michigan votes to the right of Pennsylvania for the first time. Um, I think these suburban margins about hold. I think you had a shift towards Biden, and I think that they rebounded like usual. Um, I think that perhaps Vance can do better in Bucks and Northampton, kind of working class, shifting Republican. Perhaps Harris can do better in Chester and Delaware. I think they'll just swing the way the election swings, and I think with a lot of things not working out in Kamala Harris's favor, the fact that she probably has to get through a bruising Democratic primary to get to this point, she's not running against such a polarizing figure in Trump. While he did have more appeal this time around than 2020, he's still 48% of the country will never vote for him no matter what. Weird that Kamala Harris's vote share is almost exactly that. Vance is not the same. I think you'll see Philadelphia continue to fall off for Democrats. Turnout will be okay in the rural areas. Northeastern Pennsylvania continuing to shift Republican. I think Republicans are approaching their max in the state. I think the state could be, a bit of a titanium lean to tilt R state. I think that Michigan will vote to the right of it, but I think that Vance will probably win Pennsylvania. Wisconsin as well. I don't think you'll see the Wow County shift as Democrat as they did in 2024 against Vance. I think they'll shift Democrat, but I think that Vance is much more palatable to a Washington suburbanite than Trump. I think you'll also see these rural areas continue to shift Republican. This is just how trends work. You could potentially even see the northern area. And like I think someone tried to call these the WOW, like the WOW belt. Um, they had some weird acronym for it. But like the northern play, I don't know what the northern woods, I think, are what they're called. Of Wisconsin, whatever the hell they're called, Tiffany and Weeds District will continue to shift Republican, and then Brown, the Bow counties, Fox River Valley, um, they'll remain about stagnant. You also see Kenosha, Racine, working class areas here continue to shift Republican, and Milwaukee and Dane. I do think will give a little bit more in Republicans' favor, not too much, but enough to make the state about a 1.5 to 2 point win. Georgia also, I think, will be lean Republican. Um, it's a bit of a hot take, but I think that black turnout probably isn't going to be the best for Democrats. I think we'll continue to see inner city Atlanta shift Republican. I think, especially against someone not named Trump, these trends will continue, but they won't continue to, a massive extent. Um, and the northern suburbs are not shifting Democrat, which is a very big problem for Democrats. And the rest of the state will shift Republican enough that it'll be less than Trump's margin of victory. I think it will shift left. But I don't think Kamala Harris will win the state, and I think it'll be about a 1 point win for Republicans, which means now it's purely offensive for Vance. Um, Leaning Democrat, New Mexico, I think, the border will still be an issue, but if the border shifted the state only like at most 5 points Republican, I don't even think it was 5 points. Um, and these suburban areas didn't shift that Republican. I think no matter how much of an issue the border is, even if it's more than 2024, which 2024 is probably the height, you just don't have the Hispanic trends in the state to win it as of now. Um, so I just think, that's a problem. Bernalillo will always be such a massive monolith. Doñana does have quite a few votes, but it doesn't have nearly as much as Bernalillo County. Um, and I think you just have these two massive monoliths in the center of the state. It's going to be very hard to win. It'll get closer. You'll see this kind of ring around the two monolith counties, Albuquerque, Santa Fe, those two cities. Shift more Republican. Republicans could potentially flip some more counties. Other than that, you go home with nothing. About a 3 to 4 point win for Kamala Harris. Um, that is it for lean Democrat. Yeah, quite a few likely Democrat. If I wanted to, be a little bit pessimistic on our chances, Virginia, Nebraska second would be in the lean column. Um, but we'll be generous, That's what's nice. So now the remaining states are tilt one way or the other. Three tilt states. That's more than the one in 2024. Maybe these are over 1 point for whoever wins them. I don't know. But they're definitely the closest of the close. And I think we'll start off with New Hampshire. Now, New Hampshire, it doesn't like incumbents. I think that, that'll definitely hurt Vance here. But Trump invested almost nothing into the state in 2024. It was considered by many to be like a safe Democrat state. And he still did better than people expected. 2.8 loss is much better than his 7 point loss in 2020. you are seeing some of these suburban areas shift Republican. Areas like Salem and the area around that, the northern area, the northern area of New Hampshire, like this Coos County area, um, and even some of these western parts. I mean, there's a reason why if you go here, Trump ended up flipping a county. I think it's Sullivan County. Yeah, there's a reason Trump ended up flipping there, and there's a reason why the second district shifted more than the first district. But those areas are MAGA, and even though Trump doesn't do as good as 2016 throughout the rest of the state, he still is doing pretty good here, and these areas are still shifting Republican. Um, I think it'll be close. I definitely think, this depends on how the campaign is run. I just think Kamala Harris will lose a bit of her luster as a Democratic candidate. The state's anti-incumbent swing isn't as much as in previous years. This is kind of, the part where this forecast could fall apart a little bit. If it is, it's just, Trump wasn't that great of a candidate um, for the state. But, like, Maggie Hassan outperformed Biden. Like, I think that the anti-incumbent swing is there. It's just not as much as before. Like previously, 2010, Kellyanne was a good candidate, but you could have run Adolf Hitler in the state as a Republican. He still would have won anti-incumbent swing. You can't do that anymore. But I think Vance will have enough appeal to suburbanites, especially in the MAGA suburban areas, exurban areas, you could call them, that he'll be able to narrowly knock the state into his column. New Jersey, it's hard. I definitely think there's future in the state for Republicans. I think the gubernatorial race will be close, but as I've looked more at it, the southern portion of the state is massive. It's actually, I think depending on how you define it, if you put Mercer and Middlesex in it, it's more Democrat than the northern portion of the state of like Bergen, Essex, Hudson, Union, just by percentages. But like, I just don't think you're seeing the trends along what I call the Blue Belt in New Jersey. I came up with that. It's beautiful. We love it. From Camden to Hudson, because I think Bergen flips. But I think along there, you're seeing trends, but you're not going to see Vance quite hit the suburban margins he needs, especially these southern counties here. They're just not shifting Republican enough, especially places like Bloucester, Cape May, and Ocean County. It's a 7 point shift. It's good. It's not quite as much as the 10 point shift across the entire state. Um, I think it'll be close. I just think that, Kamala Harris will collapse, obviously, in the city. Um, you can thank Zoran Quaron, the fact that, this area is shifting heavily Republican because of Hispanics for that, but especially with the border dying down as an issue, a little bit. It's still an issue, but, like, you know, people are less likely to vote for, the candidate who fixed the crisis rather than vote against the candidate who caused that. But I think because of that, Democrats narrowly hold New Jersey. But Minnesota. Minnesota is always there. Um, it's a hard state because it's a hard state for Republicans to win. You definitely got to run it up in the rural areas. Previously, Republicans would win the state, in Senate elections and gubernatorial elections by getting like 45% in Hennepin County. Then you could get raped in the rural areas. But, these counties like Dakota, Anoka, Carver, Wright would save you in suburbia um, against Minneapolis and the rural areas. But, like, you can't do that anymore. Now, my three questions for Minnesota, depending on how you answer these, you're gonna either agree with how I put the state or disagree. Is one, how much of this was Tim Walz? I think a lot of it was Tim Walz. I think Tim Walz is relatively popular in Minnesota. Maybe not now that he's associated with Harris, but at this point, he was somewhat popular. You do have evidence against that. The fact that the state house flipped, which is a direct indictment on him. But I think having any local candidate, any local name on a presidential ballot will boost the candidate there. Hence why I also think Ohio might not be the best for Republicans, especially suburban areas in Ohio. We'll wait and see on that one. But I think even if it's a 2 point boost in Minnesota, that's still quite a boost. That takes, the lackluster performance of a 0.7 shift in Hennepin County. Like, damn, this can't shift to like a 2 point shift in Hennepin County, which is not, it doesn't seem like much, but it's double the shift, and it shows that Hennepin County, you're, it's beatable there. You can stop um, the Democratic trend there. That's 700,000 votes. That's quite a bit. Um, that nets Harris about 300,000 votes, twice or statewide, more than twice or statewide margin. Um, Then my second question is how much will the Minneapolis trends bite Republicans in the ass in 2028? 2020, part of the reason why the state went from like a 2 point win for Hillary Clinton all the way to an 11, I almost said 5, then I said 11, all the way to a 7 point win for Biden. Um, I don't think it's going to be that bad. I think you'll see inner city Minneapolis, even St. Paul, shift Republican. Um, I think these suburban areas will stay stagnant to some extent, but I do think areas like Wright, Carver, Scott, Hennepin, maybe even Anoka, um, Washington, Dakota. I think you could see a little bit of a leftward shift there. And I think the final question is how much can you squeeze out of these rural areas? Because these rural areas, people don't realize this, but they're slowly creeping up to the point where they could overwhelm Minneapolis. This idea that the state is Illinois, where you have to shift the state right through Chicago. Like Chicago dominates Illinois because just look at this bubble map. Like Republicans only have one Illinois statewide in recent history by winning every single county outside Chicago. That's insane. That's not the case in Minnesota. You can win the state without having to run it up in every single county around. You just have to get these rural areas out to vote and get them more Republican. You see a lot of this lighter color in between the 70% um, and the 50% color. Kind of, I see a little bit of purple in it even. Um, like this color. You see that across the state. If you can get that, if you can be cracking 70%, even 68, 69% in these counties, you have a shot. I think Vance has a shot at Minnesota. I think that, people overstate how much Minneapolis controls the state. I even don't think it'll shift that left, but I think he's the type of candidate to run it up in the rural areas, especially without Walls on the ballot, because Harris and Walls loathe each other at this point. Without Walls on the ballot, because how poorly the state has been run will affect this, I think Vance picks up Minnesota. This is, coincidentally enough, besides for the margins, how I would have said that 2024 would have gone with Biden in the race, which I think is very poetic for Kamala Harris. But that's my prediction. It's definitely less bullish than some other predictions where I'm like, oh my god, New Mexico will flip Republican, and New Jersey will flip Republican. No, I think you have to have a pretty bad candidate for that. But I do think that Harris, she had a lot go right for her in 2024. She had instant, massive droves of turnout for her, just because she was considered like this savior to so many Democrats, from Biden, like from Trump. She had almost everything go well for her. Like the media gave her almost no criticism. I don't think that happens in 2028. Even if she's treated more um, highly than JD Vance, even if she's treated better than JD Vance by the media. Um, Even if some of these newspapers endorse Kamala Harris, it's not going to be as much as 2024. You're going to feel a drop off. You're going to feel some fatigue with Democrats. Um, People are going to be less likely to go out, vote for a very flawed Democrat without Trump on the ballot. I think you see Kamala Harris lose, and I think it's a little bit more um, than she lost against Trump with. Minnesota, New Hampshire flip, New Jersey almost flips. States like California, New York, Illinois narrow, while she does better in some other states like Georgia, Virginia, Maine. Um, I don't think you see the almost uniform shifts of 2024, but I still do think you see a red shift about a Vance plus 3, maybe even Vance plus 4 popular vote, which would be one of the first times that a Democrat could win the presidency without winning the popular vote in recent history. Um, I think Obama nearly did it, but like if you shift it to where John McCain was, he has to win the popular vote by a little bit more than one, which means Obama could have lost the popular vote and won there. But other than that, it's a first. But at the end of the day, I still got to give the 80 fans the distinction as being the favorite. I just think we're going to return to not complete governance by the Republican Party, but I think you're going to see, especially as Trump falls out of the mainstream and turnout dynamics begin to resemble about what you've seen for a while with, this massive special election shifts to the left and the massive general election shifts to the right. I think you'll know it'll be volatile, but elections will seem like that. We're in midterms, you'll have maybe like an 8-point shift to the left each cycle, and then presidential elections will be like R+4. Um, in the popular vote and generally uncompetitive. Um, at some point, because at this point, the tipping point stays like R+3. Um, you can't shift that during a general election campaign. Um, but yeah, just my thoughts. Like if you agree, subscribe if you agree or disagree. Share with your friends. Comment down below if you disagree with me anywhere. Thank you for watching. Godspeed. Testers done out.